Show of hands, please. Who'd vote for this guy if he was running today, based on his past record? I know I would. I'm not talking about his morals, but I mean, let's face it, we had good times under Billy Bob, did we not? And I say this as a right of center, Republican. We had some great times, prosperous times under the man. Governed from the center. Maybe it's because he had to, but nonetheless, he was able to reach across the aisle, and we had some good times under the man. Now, this is saying nothing about the man's moral code. Let me tell you, growing up, I was raised by my parents were a couple of pretty hardline Democrats. My mom, she denied that she's ever said it, but once said that the only good Republican president was Abraham Lincoln. She swore after I became a Republican that she never said that, and I'm like, yeah, Mom, you did when I was a kid. When in 1984, when Reagan was running for re-election against Mondale, and the entire country except for I think Minnesota and D.C. voted for Mondale, my parents still voted for Reagan. Excuse me, when everybody voted for Reagan, my parents still voted for Mondale. And when I was in third grade, we were doing this. We had to put up a poster of who we'd vote for, and of course, all the kids were putting up who their parents would be voting for, of course. And I saw all around the classroom, everybody was picking Reagan. Everybody, except this one weird girl. She was picking Mondale. And I was like, well, I'm putting up a Reagan poster. My mom told my aunt about that. Her aunt, who was my great aunt, and she gave me some good-natured crap about, bailing on Mondale. So yeah, they were a couple pretty big-time Democrats. So growing up, getting into high school when this guy here was running for president, and I heard all the rumors that he was goofing around with bimbos on the side, and Jennifer Flowers, yeah, Jennifer Flowers. I thought, no, this is just slander from his opponents to try to make him look bad. I'm sure this is utterly baseless. That was what I was thinking in the naivete of my youth, but the charges just kept on coming. There was all this whitewater rigmarole, and just one thing after another, and I remember saying to my sister, we were in line at the supermarket, and there was some tabloid that's had something about Clinton doing one thing or another, and I said to her, I'd finally broken. I said, Kate, even if 10% of the stuff being said about this man is somewhat true, I'm afraid it means that he's a corrupt scumbag. And she more or less agreed with me. Even if 10% of it is somewhat true, we just can't defend this anymore. So what does this have to do with, naturalism and, world beyond our own? Anybody seen this one? This is kind of a fun show, Celebrity Ghost Stories on Biography. There's a fun one with Roddy Piper, saying his house was haunted by an old wrestling buddy of his, Adrian Adonis. He's kind of looking over them from beyond the grave. I'm not exactly sure what my stance as a Christian on ghosts would be. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with demonic activity. Could it be that the souls of the damned, some of them are roaming the earth waiting for their final judgment? I don't know. Could this be their place of the dead? I don't know. But hearing just story after story, not just from celebrity ghost stories, but just from other things, I would be really hesitant to say there's no such thing as ghosts or some, or poltergeist activity or things like that. Here's one that not too many people would be familiar with. This is an account from Catholic theologian John Newhouse. John Newhouse had an interesting experience. He had colon cancer. His surgery got badly botched, and he was lying in the ICU for just days, near death. And he talks about what happened one night. I'm going to zero in on it. Okay. A couple days after leaving the ICU, it was night. I could hear patients in adjoining rooms moaning and mumbling, occasionally calling out. The surrounding medical machines were pumping and sucking and bleeping as usual. Then all of a sudden, I was jerked into an utterly lucid state of awareness. I was sitting up in the bed, staring intently into the darkness, although, in fact, I knew my body was lying flat. What I was staring at was a color like blue and purple, and vaguely in the form of a hanging drapery. By the drapery were two presences. I saw them and yet did not see them. I cannot explain that, but they were there, and I knew that I was not tied to the bed. I was able and prepared to get up and go somewhere. And then the presences, one or both of them, I do not know, spoke. I heard this clearly. Not in an ordinary way, because I cannot remember anything about the voice, but the message was beyond mistaking. Everything is ready now. That was it. They waited for a while, maybe for a minute. Whether they were waiting for a response or just waiting to see whether I received the message, I don't know. Everything is ready now. It was not in the form of a command, nor was it an invitation to do anything. They were just letting me know. Then they were gone, and again I was flat on my back with my mind racing wildly. I had an iron resolve to determine right then and there what had happened. Had I been dreaming? In no way. I was then and now as lucid and as wide awake as I had ever been in my life. Tell me I was dreaming, you might as well tell me that I was dreaming that I wrote the sentence before this one. Testing my awareness, I pinched myself hard, ran through the multiplication tables, recalled the birthdates of my 7 brothers and sisters, and my wits were vibrantly about me. The whole thing had lasted 3 or 4 minutes, maybe less. I resolved at that moment that I would never let anything dissuade me from the reality of what had happened. Knowing myself, I expected I would later be inclined to doubt it. Just to break in, Newhouse was not a flamboyant theologian. He says elsewhere in this article he was never big on this near-death experience business, but he was a lot less skeptical after he experienced this. It was an experience as real, as powerfully confirmed by the senses as anything I had ever known. That was some 7 years ago. Since then, I have not had a moment in which I was seriously tempted to think it did not happen. It happened as surely, as simply, as deniably as it happened that I tied my shoelaces this morning. Doesn't sound like Newhouse's brain was lacking oxygen or any of that other stuff when that happened. It sounds like he had his wits about him. And it sounds like his consciousness existed beyond his body. Alright, so maybe all the things on celebrity ghost stories are junk. Maybe all the things, maybe something, I don't know, maybe Newhouse is wrong. I have my doubts. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate. I have numerous friends who have had paranormal experiences. A friend of mine who toyed around with the occult before he became a Christian was terrorized by demons in the middle of the night, and there were about 8 of them. They were screaming at him in his bed that some in a language he couldn't understand, some in English. One of them was screaming, "Jesus doesn't love you," and they closed in on him. He shut his eyes. He hoped they would go away. He opened. They were even closer. He panicked and screamed at them, "In Jesus' name, I command you out of here." And they were gone. Stuff like this. A friend of mine on YouTube testifies that he had a crippling heart condition, that Jesus Christ specifically revealed himself to him and healed his heart condition. A heart condition that killed his mother and grandmother before they turned 50, and he has now outlived them both, and he has not had a trace of this condition that crippled him for several years, crippled him for a couple of years, and hasn't had a trace of it for the past 18 years. What does Bill Clinton have to do with any of this? I don't doubt that there are not junk stories of miracles and junk stories of the supernatural. No two ways about it. But even if 10% of those stories are somewhat true, the worldview of naturalism just collapses. Absolutely collapses. If you are so bold to think that all of these stories are false, junk, made up, scams, tales told by charlatans, I have 9 words for you as I close. I did not have sexual relations with that woman.